together. We only need the two of us together.
This is Mac Studio and Studio Display. Mac Studio is an entirely new Mac with the unbelievable performance of our most powerful.
Most of us at some point or another experience FOMO, fear of missing out. If you're watching this video, then you probably experience it anytime a new piece of technology comes out. For the greater part of the past year, I really thought that I beat this kind of toxic mindset. But with the recent launch of the Mac Studio, those emotions definitely got fired up again. So is it ever possible to escape this FOMO? And how can you actually tell if you should buy something like this new Mac Studio? In this video, I want to run you through some of the self-checks that I do that have greatly alleviated the FOMO feeling. So this is what FOMO actually looks like. Usually it's a lot of internal dialogue justifying why you should buy something or why you shouldn't. Maybe you sit there and watch every single review or unboxing from every single creator over and over just so you can attempt to steal some of that dopamine that that person is getting from having a new thing. It's a lot of going to eBay and different websites where you can sell or trade in your gear and seeing what sort of value you can get for it, or looking around your studio to see, oh, if I sell all that stuff in the corner, would that justify buying this new computer? The first question we need to ask ourselves is the most logical. Is there a need? See, I bought the trash can Mac Pro back in 2013 when it came out, and I kept it until the 2019 Mac Pro. And during all those years, that computer was an absolute beast, and I loved having it, and I never questioned upgrading or replacing it with any other computer on the market. But in its last year and a half, it really started to slow down to the point where I was literally bottlenecked by how fast I could churn out projects for clients and YouTube. And when you're actually losing out on money because your computer is too slow, that is a great justification for upgrading, especially if it's for business needs. So now, less than 2 years later, this Mac Studio comes out, which is like a third of the price, twice the specs in some regards. But when I actually look at, okay, what need would a Mac Studio be fulfilling that my Mac Pro isn't? My Mac Pro handles all of my projects nearly flawlessly. The Mac Studio is also another desktop computer, so it would basically just replace this box sitting on the desk with another box sitting on the desk. I had to remind myself the reason that I bought this back in 2019 when I replaced my trash can Mac Pro and not a laptop was because I wanted to give myself the ability to meet future needs. One of my biggest recent needs was internal storage. And this is the base Mac Pro, so it came with 256, which is basically just enough for the OS, main applications, and like 50 gigs of just kind of headroom for the computer to run. Now I have my Drobo down there with about 70 terabytes, but that's mostly for archival purposes. So shortly after I got the computer, I bought a cheap 2 terabyte NVMe SSD, got a PCIe adapter, and threw that in there. So the workflow is that 2 terabyte is my active working projects. Once I'm done with them, I transfer them to the Drobo where they go for archiving. So I looked around the market for different hard drives, just more storage capacity, maybe a RAID array. And then I stumbled upon the 𝗖𝗛𝗖𝗞 from OWC. If you have no idea who they are, Otherworld Computing. They were awesome enough to partner with me on this. And so they sent out a 𝗖𝗛𝗖𝗞 for me to test out. They were awesome enough to send me the 16 gig, which is way more than I currently need, but it is so nice to have that headroom. And what makes this different, it is essentially what looks like a big full-size graphics card, but inside is just 8 individual NVMe M.2 SSDs, and it comes with a soft RAID license, so that way you can set this up however you want. If you want pure performance, you can stripe the data so that it goes as fast as possible, or if you want a little bit more redundancy, you can do like a RAID 5. But the setup was as stupid easy as it comes. It's just like when I added the extra GPU that I bought from Apple. You just open up the Mac Pro, unlock the logic board, take out the little locking plate, slide and lock in the card, put everything back the way it was, boot up the computer, launch soft RAID, configure the drives however you want. And now not only do I have 16 terabytes to work for active projects, but also check out these read and write speeds, literally over 6,000 or 7,000 megabytes per second. I'm terrible at math, but that's what, like 3 or 4 times the amount of my fastest NVMe SSD in there. And gosh, it's like 10 or 15 times faster than my Drobo. So going back to the main point of this video, that upgrade taught me that I'm using this computer exactly how I wanted it to. I had a future need and I was able to meet it. But whatever your scenario is, when you ask yourself the question, is there a need? And you can be 100% honest with yourself and you come up with something totally reasonable. The answer is yes, buy the thing. But oftentimes the answer is no. So what can you do to help rid yourself of this FOMO? But it's just about taking a step back and appreciating what you have and kind of relearning to fall in love with what you have. It sounds silly, but it's something I think a lot of us forget to do. I often think of 𝗦𝗧𝗨𝗙𝗙, who is a pretty large creator here on YouTube, makes killer videos. I've actually been working on a documentary featuring him for quite some time, and a small snippet of it actually fits perfectly for this, talking about how he hasn't upgraded his camera in years and has no desire to.
The piece of tech that I have had for the longest amount of time is the Canon 90D. That camera is not super expensive, and I've used it for almost the entirety of YouTube being my full-time job and YouTube being one of my main focuses in my life. It's missing a lot of pro features, doesn't have things like great focus peaking, zebras, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't shoot HDR, but I'm fine with that. This camera I've learned to use every single aspect of. I've learned all the ins and outs, how to use this thing with my eyes closed pretty much, and it works well for me. I see a lot of people buying Reds and Blackmagic cameras and all these crazy setups with huge rigs. Like the camera we're shooting on right now, you can't see it, but it's pretty wild. For me, I like to keep it as simple as possible. The less I have to do, the less I have to learn. No crazy rigs, no crazy gear, 90D.
While I don't have a lot of examples myself of times that I've been super good about not wanting to upgrade something, one example is definitely my car. I have a 2016 Hyundai Veloster Turbo. It was the last year that they had factory matte gray paint. I love matte finish on anything. And even though we're in the world of Teslas and borderline self-driving cars, mine is a full stick shift manual and I love it. It doesn't have CarPlay. It's not the fastest or the most powerful car out there, but to me, it's comfortable, it's fun, it zips around, it's low to the ground, it looks cool in my opinion. And so even though I know there are vastly better cars out there, every time I drive it, I'm just like, I love this car. And that's the way we should feel about everything. That's how I should feel about the cameras I use, the computers I use. The next step that I took was actually pretty hard, and that is stop watching other creators for a while. Anytime I would watch other creators, I kind of just got depressed because I wanted the thing that they were talking about in the video. 𝗦𝗧𝗨𝗙𝗙 is an amazing filmmaker here on YouTube and one of my favorite creators, but I have to admit I stopped watching him for a while because I just got depressed at one, how good he is, and I was jealous that my videos didn't look as good. And then when he got his red Komodo, I really wanted a red Komodo ever since it was announced. And seeing another Blackmagic owner switch over to a red Komodo just started triggering that major FOMO. I was constantly on eBay and like, okay, if I sell all of my Blackmagic cameras, can I have enough to buy one Komodo? And I found myself just less productive and just kind of depressed overall because someone else got this thing that they worked really hard for and deserve, while I just sat there saying, woe is me. So Spencer, I promise I'm watching your videos again. I went back and binged all the other ones. If you find yourself binge watching creators and not feeling good at the end of the videos, but just feeling sad, like you're missing out on everything, take that as a sign to take a step back and work on your own stuff. All right, so maybe after thinking about everything, you realize, I know this isn't a need, it is purely just a want. We all have wants that aren't justified by a need. And to that, all I'll say is set up a game plan to buy it in a smart way. Again, too many times in the past, I've taken out ridiculously dumb loans, maxed out credit cards, sell stuff that I didn't actually want to sell, all to hurry along the process to be able to click buy on something I wanted. Set up a game plan where you're going to say, okay, I'm going to withhold my Amazon associates earnings and kind of set that aside as my savings. Or maybe if I get 3 sponsorships, that will be enough to buy the thing that I want. Whatever your game plan is, just kind of lay it out, make sure it's smart, make sure you're not going to hurt yourself in any other areas financially, and go for it. Sometimes I think about if 15-year-old me could see the cool stuff that I have and all the gear that I've accumulated over the past 13-ish years of doing video production, I think how young me would be incredibly stoked. At the end of the day, our studios are filled with these tools that allow us to create the crazy visions that are in our heads. And for some of us that are extremely lucky, it gives us a source of income that provides food and shelter for our families. And for that, I truly have to take a step back and appreciate every tool that I do have. And I hope you can learn to do the same. If you guys want to see a perfect example of something I spent way too long trying to justify if it was worth buying or not, you should check out my AirPods Max review over here.